Greetings. This is Dr. Mike Nelson. It's been a little while. I haven't talked to you for over a month. Been a little busy, been enjoying myself, but today is a celebration. And so I thought I would bring that part first. My second book, For I Have Sinned, and now the first book have both been re-edited and republished. And the second editions came up on Amazon today. So they joined the third one, the Heretic. And I'm pretty pleased with the whole bunch of them. And so have been kind of feeling good about it all day. I thought that tonight I'd tell you a story that appears in the third book. The third book, The Heretic, which came out last month. It was really hot today, and even though I was a physician in the healthcare industry for 39 years, I retired last year, and now I mow lawns for my son. Today was a hot day, so I only mowed 4. And I was thinking about how nice it would be for it to be a cool day. And I was thinking about old days in northern Wisconsin when it really snows. So I thought I'd tell you this story about one time when it really snowed. Right after I turned 42, I went through a little bit of a male menopause, and I bought myself a red, hot car. Now, I was a pickup truck driver and still am, but I thought this was a pretty hot car. Now, I got to tell you, it was a Volkswagen, but it was red, and it was like a hog on ice in the snow. It was useless. Well, one spring, we had a late snow, and where we lived was high on a ridge, about 600-700 feet above where the town was, which was way down in the valley. So I went to work in the morning. Down in the valley, it was raining. Up on the hill, it snowed. And it snowed a lot. I tried to get home that night after I closed the clinic, and I made it about 3/4 of the way before the car just couldn't get through the snow anymore. There was 7 or 8 inches of really, really wet snow. And the car was low slung, it had low profile tires, it was red. So it bogged down, it got the engine block up on the snow, and that was the end of it, right in the middle of the road. So I had to walk home the last 3 miles in the snow. When I got home, I was worried about my red car sitting in the middle of the road, out in the middle of the country, because the snowplow drivers get up early. So I called the town commissioner, and I got him on the phone, and he was one of those guys that was kind of a salt of the earth guy, never said much, chewed his tobacco, worked hard. He'd been living in the hills and with his families for a century. So I called him. He answered the phone. Yep. So, well, hey, Tom, this is Mike Nelson. I wanted to let you know I got stuck up in the Ridgeville Road, and the car's there, but I walked home. Okay. Well, I just wanted to let you know because you're plowing tomorrow morning, and I'll get somebody with a team of horses to pull it out. We'll get her out. I said, no, you don't understand. It's in the middle of the road. He said, I'll pick you up 5 o'clock. Be out to get into your lane. Click. Okay. Well, the next morning, I went out, stood by the mailbox. Sure enough, over the hill, here come this big old road grader with a big V-plow in the front of it, just going to town down the middle of the road, throwing the snow in both directions. Pulled up next to the house, stop, open the cab door. Now it's a road grader. So it's got a little square box on the top where the driver sits, so he's not out in the snow. but it doesn't have a heater, and it sure don't have an air conditioner for the summer. So we went. So I climbed up in there, and it was a pretty tight squeeze. I'm not a little guy. Tom was a lot less of a little guy. So there was just enough room for Tom and me, his thermos, his spit cup. He always had a big chew of tobacco on one side of his mouth. And that was it. And off we went on up the road, just in the grader. Well, Tom didn't talk much, and I didn't know what to say to Tom, so the two of us just rode right along. Oh, here we came up over the road and out onto the highway, and then we turned up the Ridgeville Road, and sure enough, little red spot in the middle of the road about a half a mile away, and right up close. Pretty soon, the plow was higher. I couldn't see the car anymore. I started to sweat, stopped it on a dime. Backed up, decided he was going to go around. Now it's spring. In fact, it's mid-April. So these kinds of snows are not unusual, but the thing is, it's been warm enough for the ground to start to thaw. So the road's covered with snow, fields are covered with snow, but the ground under the snow is already started to thaw. So he started working that grader around the side of the car. About this much room between the car and the left side of that plow. And we're easing along nice and slow. And all of a sudden, well, Tom said, well, shit. Speeded it up a little. Pretty soon the plow started to lean over. The wheel started to sink down into the ditch, into the mud. Pretty soon it started to lean even more. Pretty soon it started picking up speed. And the next thing you know, the grader falls right over on its side in the ditch. Well, Tom had a lot to say about that. He said, well, shit. Starts moving the levers around. Pretty soon the side plow on the side of the grader goes down. Starts bringing the grader back up. Gets about 45 degrees. Hydraulics won't do it. Back down we go. Tom, ever eloquent, says, oh shit. Tries it again. Pretty soon the grader starts to sink down. The plow starts to sink down into the mud. Now it won't push at all. Well, we're sitting there. I'm laying on the glass. I've got spit cup and coffee and Tom laying on side of me. And the best we can do is about 30 degrees. And Tom was not diligent in his hygiene either. So the cab was crowded, even more so laying on its side. And we look up, and here coming down the road is the big old ComEd truck with a crew coming down the road, and, well, they couldn't believe it. So they stopped right behind my little red car. Didn't even think twice about it. Out of the cab come these four guys, and they started paying out the winch on the front of the truck, and they're climbing through the snow, and they tied onto the grader and say, give her a go. Tom lowers the plow. Grader starts to come up. She comes up to about 45 degrees. That truck starts pulling, and the winch starts turning. Well, we don't get any further than that, but now the winch starts pulling the truck right at us. Well, Tom says, well, shit. He puts up his hand, they stop. The guys climb out and they say, we got to put a cable up higher. We can't get enough leverage. Tom said, too right. They put the cable up around the top. Right up around where we are in the cab. They put the cable around. Back up. Start pulling. Cable snaps. Boom! Down she goes. and all the oil spills out of the engine all over that hot engine, and she starts to smoke like crazy. The cab starts filling up with smoke and everything else. These guys come over and they move the cable up even higher, splice the cable, start pulling. Up she comes, up she comes, up she comes, and drops on the wheels, and boom! Every piece of glass in the cab explodes. Tom looks at me and he goes, well, shit. Well, Doc, you better get going. You got to get to work. And that's what it's like living in the country. I'm excited about my books, and I'm glad to be back. Silly story, but one of my fun ones. I liked being there. Have a good night.